Right, we are starting the kitchen with adding the window on the back wall as we have with the others. It's exactly the same construction. You've got your little curtains, the pelmet, the window frame, and it's all constructed in exactly the same way as before. So if you go ahead and do that first, you will note that the only thing to note is that the window is quite near the top of the wall, and that is because we've then got the cupboards underneath it. As you're doing this, just make sure that you've got it in the same place that you do on the outside. If you decided to bring it down, you'll also then need to adjust the cabinets underneath. But if you're following exactly as per the pattern, your window will be quite near the top. Right, we're now going to start on all of the little bits that are either removable or not. You can either have these various food, fruit, vegetables, pots, so that the kids can actually pick them up and play with them, or they can be stuck to the wall. So do whatever is appropriate that you want to do for yours. I'm going to show you both ways. For either way, the very first thing you need to do is cut out any lettering and stick or sew it to the item, and also sew any detail stitching. Now, when you're doing the detail stitching, it is easier to remove the paper backing so that you have the glue showing. However, do it in this order. Put the lettering on first, so that you don't, if you're using double-sided interfacing, you don't put the lettering on. So this needs to say peas, but what I've done here is done it in the wrong order. I should have done it this way, which is put the milk on first, so that I've got the paper backing on and I can stick that with my iron, and then then remove your paper backing and do your detail stitching, if that makes sense. So I've done that one in the wrong order, so I can now show you how to fix it when you do it this way. So rewind. First thing you need to do is pop the lettering on, leave your paper backing on any that if you're using double-sided interfacing that you're doing the lettering on. Do that first. Second, peel the backing off and do any detail stitching. The next thing you're going to want to do is put the hook and loop tape, and we're going to use the hook side, which is the scratchy one on all of the removable ones. If you've got a reason you'd prefer to do it the other way around, that's fine. I like to do the scratchy side because then as the kids have removed everything off the wall, there's nothing scratchy that their clothes can catch on the wall. It's all the furry loop side on the wall. So that's my reasoning for that, but do it the other way around if you would prefer. So you want to get a piece of hook tape that's approximately 1 inch long for all of these bigger pieces, and then you can just do it appropriately whatever the size is for the smaller pieces. You're going to need then your back and your front. So some of these have assembly in multiple pieces, some of them are just a front and a back like this. If you have peeled the backing off and you have not got your letters on first, don't worry, we can do that afterwards. So you're going to get your two pieces and then place them so that they are wrong sides together. So that's going to be the back, that's going to be the front, and these two are going to be facing outwards, and this is going to be the inside. Now, if you have, and I did it on accident on some of mine, put paper backing on both of them, that's fine. You can remove the paper backing off both and glue them together. If you do that, you just want to be careful that you don't get any glue coming around squishing out the outside. So definitely put a tea towel or something over your piece and then iron it if you have done that. But you want to get them so they're backed, and then flip it over, and then in the middle of the back we're going to take our hook tape, and if you've got stuff that's not sticky, you will definitely need to sew it. And then I know that I've got that on the right way. If I just put them like this and flip one over and that, I might have it the wrong way around. So do put them back to back so that you can check that you are getting it on the side that is going to be shown. There is no magic place of where to put this, just somewhere approximately in the middle. And then you want to stitch this on to hold it. And then after that, we're going to glue them together. And I've done this one to show you. This one has a piece on the back and I have glued it together. Now you will see here, there's a little bit of overlap on some of them. I haven't cut mine out quite, it's mostly precise. There's a little bit of non-precision there, so I'm going to just trim those bits so that I get a nice straight edge along there. And then that's my finished milk carton. So it's got the look on the front, and on the back it's just got the bit of scratchy tape to attach it to the wall. Anywhere you've forgotten to put the lettering on first, once you've stitched that and stuck it together, then you can pop your lettering on as well. There you go, you can see these are both now the same. I've got my lettering, my stitching, they're double backed, and they've got Velcro on the back. So these are all ready to use. So if you repeat that with all of the ones where it is nice and simple with the lettering, and then we're going to go through the more complex ones in a moment. So these are all of the pieces that I'm going to show you that you can do now before we then do the complicated ones. So I'll go through them one at a time. Milk, the pot that can have its little scratchy bit on the back, peas, watermelon, cake. This one you're going to have to place in order. You put the plate down first, then the first layer is this big layer of the cake, the icing, the next layer of cake, the icing. So they go one on top of each other. And this one you might almost certainly have to just trim off any little bits that you get not quite right, like I did, unless you cut out with a cutting machine, in which case they'll be beautiful. Ice, and then there will be 3 plastic tubs and 1 leftovers tub, or you can label them however you want. Some bread on a tray, and then you've got 3 onions, a bottle of sauce, and a spatula, a knife, and a spoon. So all of these can be assembled ready now. We're going to do the eggs in the egg box next. The eggs are just 2 little ovals that are double-sided with the hook tape on the back. So same as we did before, put the hook tape on the back of one piece and then stick the 2 together. And then you want to repeat that for all of your eggs. The egg box itself, pop the lettering on and the stitching, and then place it. You've got 4 egg box pieces. They are all identical when you place them one on top of the other. The top one needs to have the lettering and the stitching. I've done them 2 different colours so you can see what I'm doing here, but you can do them all the same colour if you want. And then the one that's going to be at the very back needs the hook tape. So they are going to go like this, and we're going to cut out this top one and stitch it all around, and then that way you can put the eggs inside and they can be kind of just squished inside there. So this is going to be a thick piece. So do all of that first, and then we're going to cut out the square here. For the hole in the top of the egg box, I've got my traced pattern piece here. Now you can see, if I bring that here, that it is just in from each of these, the edges here and the lines here. So you can do one of 2 ways. You can either place it on the back of your piece and you can cut along here, or you can go by eye on the front. It's up to you. The easiest way I find to do this is to fold, or you could even then mark it. So you could mark along where you want to cut, like so. So the easiest way I find to do this is to fold in half, and I like to use my thread scissors. I know that's terrible, but I do sharpen them regularly, because then I've got a very small little one that I can make a point, and I can cut along much more controlled than if I use my big scissors. They're a bit kind of bulky to do that with. So I like to use my little ones, and I'm going to cut along each of these edges here to cut out the central hole. And just do, as you can see, I'm trying to do lots of small little snips versus one big one. Sometimes you can end up with the line slightly wonky by doing that, and you've got to fix it afterwards. But I would rather have the control and know that I'm going to not accidentally cut anything I don't want to. So this bit can go on your scraps. This bit is now ready to use. Right, you've now got your 2 pieces. You're going to place the one with the hole and the lettering on top of the other one, like so. And what we're going to do is we're going to stitch around the outside here, up and along this top edge. Do not stitch this bottom one here. We want to have it totally attached, but with this bit here open. So along. You're going all the way around the very outside. This is it stitched. I've gone all the way around this outside edge, and you can see that that's still loose in there. Next, you want to get the egg placement, put them all in to just check where they're going to go. You might find that your hook and loop tape is scratchy enough on your Velcro, on your felt, that they just stick like this, or you might need to put the backing on. Once you're happy with the placement, you can go ahead and stick the loop tape. You can see here that I have alternated them in 2 rows. You could also just stick a strip of loop tape if you'd prefer, or you can just rely on the hook tape on the egg sticking to the Velcro. Up to you. So these are them all stuck in. I've just placed them in on top of the hook and loop tape there, of the hook tape. Right, for each of the 3 carrots, get your 2 top pieces and stick them back to back, glue or stitch in place. The back piece, you want to get a piece of hook tape on the back of it, and then you've got your front piece here that you've done the detail stitching on. So to assemble, put the back piece with the hook tape down, the carrot top goes over the top of that, and then the top goes on top like so. Now if you've got double-sided interfacing, you can give that an iron and it should all stick. If it doesn't want to stick, make sure to go over the top a couple of times, because in my experience the kids do pick them up by the end versus in the middle, so they will pull them apart. So that is your then little carrot complete, and that's the same for all 3 carrots. Here's all 3 carrots finished, all with the little bits on the back, and they're all ready to play. So this is the grapes. It's kind of hard to see because it's all purple, but I've put the first grape on the bottom and I'm going to apply it in rows going up. That's the second row up, and then we've got row 3, and we're just going to go all the way up 1 row at a time. So there's all of the rows attached now. Next, on your spare grape backing piece, put a bit of the hook tape, and we're going to do the same as the carrots, where you want to get the 2 stalks and put them, stitch them together. Then if you put your backing piece down, your stalk piece is going to come out the middle, and then we're going to peel the paper backing off our grapes now and sandwich that stalk between them like so. You might find you need to stitch to make sure that the stalk stays secure. There we go, that is now all attached and finished. We've sandwiched the stalk between the grape and the grape backing. Right, we're going to do the lattice on the pie top next. This is my hand-drawn one off the pattern piece. So you can follow the exact pattern piece, or you can do it as you want. The way that I do this is I lay pieces of ribbon that are longer than I need over the top of the pie first, so that I can get the placement and see how I want it. And then after that, I'm then going to thread it through. So I'm going to get it how I want it first, and then I'll thread them. Once you've got it all laid out like this, there's no magic way of doing this. I just start feeding them under and over like so. So you want to do this however you makes most sense, I guess, for you. But I'm just going to feed them on, and then once I've got them all kind of threaded through, the next thing I'll then do is kind of wiggle them around to get them as neat as I can, and then I'm going to pin them in place, and I'm going to stitch all the way around the outside to hold them in place so that it's all then secure. So there we go, check that they all go over under, and then wiggle them about so that they are even and looking how you want them to look. There we go, and then once I've got them like that, then I'm going to pin these edges so that I can then stitch without, I keep seeing where I want to adjust it to, so I can stitch without them moving around. That's all pinned now. I'm going to stitch all the way around. Because I've got the pins going in the direction of my stitching, I'm just going to be super careful to take each one out as I stitch it. So I'm going to stitch around the outside, and it doesn't matter where I start, but I want to go close to the edge of the pie top and carefully remove each of the pins as I get up close to it. Right, once I've stitched, then I'm going to trim each of these ribbons so that they are approximately 1 inch too big for the pie top. Right, next you want the pie back, the pie tin, and then we've got our ribbon here. And what I've just done here is I've taken each of these little bits, the leftover bits of ribbon, and I folded them under. So it looks like an absolute mess, but it is all folded under. If you want to, you could stitch around here again to hold that in place before we then glue it on here. But if you're using double-sided interfacing, the glue will hold all of these down. So it's a little bit tricky to get it all on, the pins out, and then iron it. So if you want to do it the other way around, you can, but we're going to then have to, because these ribbons here mean that the glue won't necessarily stick it down, we're going to then have to stitch around again to hold it on. So I'm going to show you both ways. I'm going to stitch around now so that you can see it, but if you wanted to just stick it straight on, you could. Also need to put a little bit of hook tape on the back of your pie backing. Then you want to place your pie top and your pie tin on the pie backing and iron them on. If you have not got, you're not using spray glue or backing in between on both the backing and the top, you might find that you also need to stitch this around again one more time to hold it on if the ribbon stops it from adhering. If you find that it sticks nicely, then you're done with that piece. Now, if you want to do these so that they're not removable, all of these little bits that we've got done here, our big pile of stuff, you're going to assemble them in the exact same way I just showed you in the video, except do not put the backing piece on and do not do the hook tape. Instead, what you're going to do is do the stitching, do the letters, get it all assembled and ready. So all of these pieces are identical, except you'll then put them aside, and then when we've finished making the actual wall part, then place each of these where you want them and remove any last paper backing off the back and stick them, glue them, or stitch them in the right place. So it's literally identical. So these onions, for example, stitch the detail and then put them aside, and then you're not going to add the backing or the hook tape, you're just going to stitch them onto in the fridge in the exact same way. And all of these pieces are the same, even the ones where you're putting multiple layers on. You just don't attach the backing, you just stick these straight onto the fridge or wherever you would like them in the kitchen when it's complete. Now, onto the actual kitchen units. These are designed to be modular, so there are 3 units and 1 fridge in the table tent that I'm showing you. If you've got a card table, for example, you might only do 1 unit or the fridge. So you're going to adjust this based on how big or small your table that you're doing it is and what units you want in there. The first thing I'm going to show you for exactly as the pattern, so obviously just adjust it as needed. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put the buttons on each of the drawer fronts. Now, when you're placing these, you can follow the layout on the wall piece, or you can measure in 1/2 inch around the outside, and then you want to place it so that it is centered in the middle of the drawer, but far enough in that it's not actually touching the edge or going into that seam allowance. Now, if you want to use buttons instead, which I'm going to, so this is just one that I cut out to show you, I'm not actually going to stick that down. If you want to do buttons instead, pop those aside, and we're going to do that after we have assembled the drawer, because we don't want the button to stop us being able to stitch around the outside as we're assembling it. Right, for all of the drawers, and I think there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 drawers and 1 cupboard, we're going to follow the same way we turned things through before. Stitch around, clip the corners, cut a little snip in the inside, and then turn it through and give it a press. So do that for all of the drawers and for the cupboard so that you've got those all finished. You will, if you're not using buttons, you'll have the handle on there already. If you are using buttons, you won't have it on there yet. Right, these are all turned through, so I've got 5 matching drawers and 1 kitchen cupboard. Right, this is one of the kitchen units. I've placed my drawers on it as per the pattern piece drawings. There's going to be a 1/2 inch seam allowance all the way around the outside, so you've got to allow for that. and then basically my drawers are evenly spaced from the top as they are from the side, with the same gap here, same gap here, same gap here, and then at the bottom is a larger gap, and that's because in a kitchen normally you would have a bigger gap at the bottom of drawers, which I think is called a kickboard. Anyway, there's usually a bigger gap at the bottom of a set of drawers. So once you've got them placed how you want, you can stitch those on. So this is all stitched on now. That's my drawers complete. We'll then finish that unit in a moment. In the meantime, we want to do exactly the same thing with the unit that's got a cupboard and a drawer. So stitch those on so that they're equal around the top and evenly spaced there, with a bigger gap at the bottom. Next, we want to finish the kitchen units just like we did the drawers. Place the a second kitchen unit on top, stitch all the way around, trim the corners, and then we're going to turn it through and give it a press. If you are using buttons for your kitchen handles, you can also attach these now, because we've done all of the main stitching that's going to be close to where the buttons go. So poke the corners through, give it a press. This is the finished drawer unit with the buttons, and this is the finished unit with the cupboard and the drawer. So we've got both of those there complete and ready. This is the oven control panel. I've put the round knobs on. You need to allow for 1/2 inch seam allowance all the way around the outside, because we're going to finish this in the same way we did the cupboards. And then you can either put, there's a little circular pattern piece that you can put in the middle to be the actual knob bit, or you can use a button. If you want to use a button, I'm going to stitch mine so they're fixed. But if you know how to stitch it with a shank so that the child can turn them, you can do that as well. It's up to you. Right, here are some buttons, or you can use the little round pattern piece. Then you want to get the other oven control piece, and we're going to finish it in the same way. Stitch around, clip the corners, turn it through, press. So here's the finished control panel here. We can pop that aside. Then we want to do the oven interior. So you can see I've put the shelf on here, and then temporarily place the pie on to get the placement for the loop tape that matches there. And then you can now just put this aside. It doesn't need to be on as we do the next bit, but that's where it's going to go. Or if you are sticking them on permanently, then now is the time when you want to place the pie tin, place the pie top, and actually stitch that permanently in place. If you're doing it removable though, you can get your hook tape, your loop tape in the right place, and then put the pie off to the side. Then next, get the matching oven interior piece, and we're going to stitch all the way around, clip, turn it through, press, just like we did the control panel. Right, this is now stitched together and turned through. The same thing with the oven exterior. It's going to get assembled like so. So the exterior should be ever so slightly bigger than the interior all the way around, so it makes a little kind of rim around the outside. Right, next you want to assemble the oven controls, the oven exterior and the oven interior with the shelf down the bottom. Make sure that's the correct way round on your last kitchen unit. So you can stitch all of these pieces on now, and then we're going to finish all of the kitchen units in that same way that we've done all of these, with another piece of fabric, stitch around, clip the corners, turn it through. This is it all stitched on, so that's my oven almost finished. Then I want to get to the last part of the kitchen unit, place it on top. I'm going to stitch around, clip, turn through, press. So here is the oven completely turned through and ready to attach to the wall. Right, now we want to do the fridge freezer. First thing we need to do is put the shelves onto the fridge interior. Then you want to get all of the different things that are going to be in the fridge. If you are putting them so that they're not removable, you can stitch them on now, glue and stitch them on now. If you're making them removable, then we want to get little bits of loop tape, place them all on, and then see where the loop tape needs to go and stitch the loop tape on. So for all of the little bits that go in the fridge, you've got your hook tape on the back of the actual item, and then put the loop tape where you want it to go. If you are making them permanent, then you can stick or stitch them on now. If not, you want to just do the loop tape, and then I would actually take these back off again so that then we can do the other side of the fridge, so we can turn it through easily. This is the freezer here. We're putting each of the pieces down to get where the hook and loop with the loop tape needs to go. So I've put each of those on, and then next we want to get the backing and do the same thing. Stitch around, clip and turn through and press. Both your fridge freezer interiors should be finished and turned through with either the pieces on them or the little bits of loop tape, and your shelves on there too. So they're both finished and ready to use. Alright, this is our whole fridge with the freezer and the fridge both on the fridge back piece. Next we want to place the two fridge backs together and stitch them and turn them through. Right, your back of your fridge should now be all finished. If you haven't already, place the two bits together and then stitch around and turn through. Right, for the fridge and freezer door, you should have interfacing for all, for both the fridge outside door, fridge inside door, freezer outside door, freezer inside door. So there'll be 4 pieces that you need to interface. I've got quite thick interfacing here to kind of hold the door stiffly, and that's also why we have it on both sides of the door. Normally when you do interfacing you would only put it on one side of something, well, depending on what the project is, but most projects you only put them on one side, but this you're going to put it on both. And if you've got iron on interfacing, you can iron it, otherwise you can stitch that on. And then we're going to place the fridge door and the freezer door both right sides together, stitch around, turn it through. Now when you turn it through you might find that some of your interfacing comes away from the door. Just make sure to give it a really good press once you've turned it through to get it all stuck back down again. Right, when you place the fridge and freezer doors right side together, you'll have the interfacing on the outside. Instead of stitching all the way around like we have for the others, you're going to start on one of the straight edges, go along, up, around the corner, down, and then finish on another straight edge, leaving a gap of 3 to 4 inches for turning. So we're not going to go all the way through and then cut a gap in the middle and turn it through. We're going to leave a gap on that straight edge where the fridge and freezer butt up against each other for turning. That way your fridge and freezer is double-sided, so then you can open and shut the door and not have a hole in the back. So to turn this one through, we're going to trim the corners, and I'm going to use pinking shears or do little snips into these corners up here to make sure that that turns through nicely. Poke out my corners, give it a press, making sure that these raw edges are then tucked inside once I finish it. So we want to attach the door handle to the fridge and freezer. It goes in the top right for the fridge, the bottom left for the freezer, and you place it 1 inch in and 1 inch down, or 1 inch up and 1 inch in, and stick or glue that on. Now we want to do the top stitching around the fridge and freezer door. What you want to do is stitch the whole way around, but starting from where the door starts to curve, going all the way around, up the side, along the edge, and then finishing at the square edge. And then the same for the freezer, starting at where it starts to curve, coming all the way around and finishing here. So that means you're leaving the area which is going to be joined to the fridge back on both of them. So that's like the hinge, you're not stitching that. Then pop the fridge and freezer door temporarily onto the fridge. You're just placing them, you're not stitching them yet. And what you want to do is place some hook and loop tape at the top right edge of the fridge door, and ditto for the bottom right edge of the freezer door. You may also find, depending on the weight of your doors, that you need to put some up on this top corner here in case it flaps open when they're playing with it and it's vertically on the wall. But mine seems to be okay. You can test that by pinning down this side here and holding it up and seeing if that stays closed or open. I've laid this out on my floor so you can see it. I've put the fridge and each of the cabinets where I want them and then stitched them in place. So I've got this laid out so you can see it again. The next bit after all of that is to pop the fridge and the freezer doors where they're going to go, and then stitch a very narrow rectangle down the left hand side of each piece. It needs to start just where the curve starts and then finish down at the bottom. So it's a very narrow rectangle so that then you can pick up the door and open it and close it. And that will probably end up quite creased after all of that, and you'll need to give it a good press. For this epic kitchen, we're now on finishing details. You want to put the pot where it needs to go, and then put the matching loop tape, trying to do that one-handed, matching loop tape on the other side, so that then the pot can stick on the stovetop. Next up, in this top corner, you want to pop the utensil holder down and then get each of your 3 utensils, put a bit of loop tape on the other side, and you want to line them up with where you would like them to go, and then stitch or stick, whichever you've got, your loop tape on. And we are nearly there with this epic kitchen. If you've got this far, this is the biggest, hugest part of the whole tent. So we're nearly there. Well done. And then the tap, where you want the tap to go. So my carpet is actually not even big enough to contain this. I've had to lay it on the carpet and the floor. This is the finished kitchen with the fridge open. You've got the oven with the pot and the pie, and then the utensils above it, the window, and then you've got the fridge and the freezer, or freezer and fridge. When we close it up, this is what the fridge freezer looks like, and that's the whole of the back.